Hi everyone. I'm Bogdan Petcu. I'm a product manager at Tobii, and I've spent my last decade building computer vision products. I'm very excited to be once again here at InCabin in Motor City, a place with so much history in the automotive world. And I'm very grateful to see so many familiar faces. Thank you all so much for joining this keynote. So if Adi Capătă, leading the AutoSens business, spoke in Barcelona about innovation and reframing our industry's vision, I'd like us to continue that same line of thought and explore ways of potentially rethinking our positioning towards safety. I'd like us to acknowledge a unique moment in our industry and discuss a potential paradigm shift. So today we will be covering user perception and technology resistance, and we will be discussing about psychological bias and a potentially different perspective. So let's start with a simple question. What business are we in? We all take pride in being in the safety business. But how often do we actually stop and ask ourselves if drivers actually feel safer thanks to our products? This year, we've reached as an industry a great milestone, right? For the first time, we are seeing a big adoption of driver monitoring systems in consumer vehicles. And this brings us not only a moment of celebration, but also a moment where we get feedback. We build products, we must look at the feedback. So let's have a look at some examples. Of course, not all feedback sounds like this. But I think it's pretty obvious to us all that a proportion of our users does not like our products. So we must ask ourselves, why is this happening, and think of ways to address it. So what can we do about it? Well, of course, since we are also focused on polishing that KPI or optimizing just a bit to make it a bit more cheaper, that's probably the solution, right? That's what's going to make the users less annoyed. Probably not. So leaving the joke aside, when I look at what's happening around us, I think of a quote that I like very much from Oren Harari, a business professor here in the US, who said something around the lines of, the electric light did not come from the continuous improvement of candles. And I think that we should ask ourselves if this saying is not very much applicable to what we're doing today. We're trying to squeeze a bit more precision while the users don't like our products. So, before we start debating solutions, let's first try to understand why is this happening. And the first thing that comes to mind is that this might be a classical manifestation of technology resistance. We are no strangers to technology resistance. We've seen it in automotive, we've seen it in safety. And probably the most popular example is the seatbelt. The seatbelt, which although had clear evidence that it saved lives, it took decades for people to actually accept it. So I think it's important to also think that to also acknowledge that the seatbelt is a safety mechanism that came by default disabled, right? Every time we go into the car, we choose to fasten our seatbelt. And even though we faced resistance 30, 40 years ago, I don't think any of us here would even think today of starting the car without fastening the seatbelt. It's a choice. And now I challenge you to think, do you foresee a day when you won't feel comfortable starting your car just because you haven't made sure DMS is on? Quite hard to believe, right? So how did we deal with technology resistance in case of the seatbelt? Well, first of all, it was enforced by law, but that doesn't necessarily address user perception. We did mainly two things to address user perception. Firstly, we published studies that demonstrated a reduced number of casualties in case of accidents where people were actually wearing their seatbelt. And secondly, we did some awareness campaigns. And of course, the first one, publishing such statistics would be great, would be the ultimate proof of the value the systems we build brings to the world, and it could definitely contribute to improving user perception. Although arguably, it would be quite hard to isolate the benefits of DMS alone against other safety systems when trying to correlate this with the frequency or severity of accidents. And it would also take enough cars with DMS on the road for enough time. So, nevertheless, a great method, but it will take some time. And I would like us to focus a bit more on the second one, the awareness campaigns. And this might sound odd. And I don't want us to talk about this because I'm proposing it as a solution. But I think it reveals something very telling, and I believe we all must acknowledge it. So let's have a look at a few examples of such campaigns from various countries back sometimes between 1950 and 1980. Can we get some sound, please?
We had mannequins in, and I'm sure that they would be convinced to wear their safety belts and to put them on their children also. Most people are injured in accidents because they don't stay in the vehicle. They don't stay in their space. If you have your safety belt on, then you will stay in your space. And if the vehicle maintains its integrity as it will, if it's designed according to standards, then the safety belt will keep you safe.
Corner. That's why you should always wear your seat belt.
Aus der Sicht des Fahrers sieht der Unfall so aus.
I'm sure this last guy was very happy when they finally decided to buy some crash dummies. So, leaving the joke aside, why did these materials work? I think it's very important that we acknowledge why did they work. And I would say they worked because they were relatable. We as humans clearly react to perceived danger. So even if I was skeptical about the seatbelt, seeing that video made the things very clear for me. If I don't wear a seatbelt, I might fly out the window. It's very clear. The definition of danger is undeniable. Now let's try to imagine how a similar thought process needs to sound like for DMS. If I don't enable DMS, I will not get that warning that might prevent me from making a mistake, that might further lead to an accident. So the perception of danger is very loose. In order for me to perceive the danger of not having DMS, it would require the sort of mental gymnastics that just doesn't come natural. So, coming back to my point earlier, I would like to ask you, do you believe this is the kind of mental process that would make us not feel comfortable start the car unless we've made sure DMS is on? Probably not. And it's not just the seatbelt. It's, I don't know, let's take emergency braking. I'm in a car, something happens in front of me, the car stops. The perception of danger is so real, I can't deny it. The car prevented me from being in an accident. And talking about accidents, I have a friend who was recently in a car accident in a taxi. In Romania, it's culturally acceptable that you don't necessarily wear a seatbelt when you are on the back seat. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But my friend was wearing it nevertheless. And after the accident, when he was telling me about it, he said something like, "Thank God I was wearing the seatbelt. Who knows what might have happened?" Now, can you imagine someone saying, "Thank God I got the coffee cup sign. Who knows what might have happened?" That's probably not going to happen, right? So, could it be that we are trying to pitch DMS to users in a way that they can not relate to it? Is this something that will go away? Will the users eventually embrace it? Or is it actually us that have to revisit the way we position ourselves towards safety? We as technologists generally build products in two ways. It's either the product-oriented one, the user-centric approach, where we iterate based on data and we make sure our products are attuned to the needs of the user, or we build them, let's say, on demand. We build products or maybe technology based on a full specification by someone else. And DMS is somewhere in between product and technology, and we have to acknowledge that we have built it more with the second approach. We've raced to meet regulation, but we didn't all the time think about how the users feel. And our value proposition was always, we are here to save lives. But is that true? Is that something the user can relate to? Because ultimately we're saying that we are offering a monitoring system that reduces the risk of them making a mistake. So it's not too late. Let's ask ourselves now, how could the user feel about such a value proposition? And I'm no expert in psychology. Everything I've shared so far is my pure intuition. But we went ahead and we spoke with someone that gave us a professional view from a psychological perspective on how could the users relate to DMS. We spoke with Professor Ola Svensson, who conducted the first study about user self-perception. So let's have a look at a fragment of our conversation with him.
We asked drivers, and they were in a group where they could see everybody else, and we asked them, how do you perceive your own skill in relation to the others in this group? If you aggregated the data, you found that most participants thought that they belonged to the more skilled group. And this was replicated. We did it in Sweden, and we did it in the US, and the effect was stronger in the US, actually.
Okay.
And then this study has been replicated many, many times.
How do you interpret the near universal tendency for drivers to rate themselves as above average?
It's a kind of self-enhancement and some cognitive self-protective action, which it's quite universal. But there is a specific problem with driving, because you don't get the proper feedback that can tell you that you are good or bad, because the safety margins are so wide that you can make a lot of small errors. We have a tendency to attribute good things to ourselves and bad things to others. Well, you may recognize this in your life. What you do is, when you have control, you prefer that alternative, even if it may even be illusory control. So that affects our decision-making, everyday decision-making.
How does that relate to the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Navarro, I don't know if you got a chance to look at that paper, but Navarro and his collaborators, they investigated driving. Those who were poor, they said they were better than they were, and those who were good, they rated themselves as less proficient than they were. And then in another study, they had poor and excellent drivers, driver test. The poor performers, they thought they were really good. And the ones who were good from the beginning, experienced, they didn't change much. No. So it's worrying with these people who don't perform well. Their own picture of themselves is a bit disturbing.
In general terms, how do you think that optimism bias influences how drivers, how they perceive risk?
First, people don't think about risks when they drive. I don't think so. The optimism bias is also related to another thing, that is that catastrophic consequences are suppressed from consciousness, you know. So everybody, they don't want to imagine themselves the worst case in a traffic situation risk. So that's another reason why they don't think about risk all the time.
If drivers inherently believe that they are good drivers, how do you think that they, from a psychological perspective, how do they react if all cars are equipped with monitoring aids designed to monitor them and make sure that they do not do any errors, so to speak?
I think that if this can be framed so as an aid, improving driving, many drivers wouldn't mind becoming better drivers. So I think they would accept it. Monitoring experience should be adapted to driver perception and cognition, of course. It can't be too complex, it should be straightforward and so on. And one problem is that drivers want finer control if possible. So maybe the aid or monitoring should be adjustable or turned off or changed. It could be changed by the driver so that it fits what he thinks.
Quite interesting, right? The majority of drivers believe they are good drivers. It's optimism bias and is related to the Dunning-Kruger effect, which makes us over-evaluate ourselves in domains that we're not experts in. So now let's think, what happens when you pitch monitoring to someone that doesn't think they need to be monitored? We don't build trust, we trigger resistance. We trigger emotional resistance. And why? Because we are challenging the user's self-perception. We are pitching supervision to someone that doesn't think they need supervision. By no means do I want to make everything sound gloomy, this product is doomed to die. This is not a problem, this is not a dead end. It's actually a great opportunity for us to continue this journey, but differently, with the user at the center. As they say, change starts with yourself. So maybe it's a good time for us to revisit the way we position ourselves towards the user, towards safety altogether, and towards this product. And this leads me to the heart of our proposal. If we continue to position DMS as a watchdog, it will continue to be met with resistance. But what if we change the narrative? What if instead of monitoring, DMS was about helping? What if instead of trying to catch the user make a mistake, we would help the driver be better? Everyone wants to be better. Even if you are overconfident, you still want to improve. But no one wants to be monitored. No one wants to be judged. No one wants to be corrected. So what if we switch from silent enforcement to active empowerment? And you might say, okay, but is this your great strategy to make users embrace DMS, to position it differently? Absolutely not. We have to take that to our hearts and build the next generation of DMS with that in mind. Build the next generation of DMS to help drivers become better. We should not build a compliance tool. We should build a companion for the driver. And The nice part of this is that it goes so beautifully with the thing we have all acknowledged in the past on this stage and on other stages, that having a camera in the car opens a whole new world for us. The car can not only help you be a better driver, but it can help you be a better person. It can help you be more entertained. It can help you be more productive. It can help you be more in touch with your well-being. And it can open up a whole new level of human-machine interaction. So having a camera in the car is not just an enabler for safety. It's a foundation for true ambient intelligence, for an ever-evolving car that adapts to the user and evolves with him. So, to do a short recap of today, we've looked at what seems to be the first wave of technology resistance. We've looked at when this happened in the past, and we've identified some differences. We've looked at our value proposition and analyzed how users can relate to it from a psychological perspective. And we've identified together 3 things, right, that we can do to course correct. First is that we should stop treating DMS as an input system to other systems. We should start building contextual systems that take into account user behavior, take into account what happens inside of the car, but also outside of the car. Secondly, maybe we should think twice before starting to optimize DMS so early. The focus of the industry is to make it cheaper. But what if we make it better? What if we bring more value to DMS rather than starting to optimize early? And thirdly, we discovered that the camera is not only an enabler for safety, but for so much more, and we should treat it as such. In closing, I would like to propose that we stop treating DMS as something that we just have to include in the car. We should treat DMS as something that the users should love. Because we are risking to perfect something that the users will never embrace. And more than that, we are risking to lose the opportunity to build something they would actually love. We need to simplify complexity, we need to enable intelligence, and most importantly, we need to empower the user. And I'm very happy that we are here at this event with so many key persons in the industry, because it will take all of us, and we will need to align our visions in order to enable such an experience for the users. And I'm happy to hear other entities in the industry like NCAB, which we heard back in October in Barcelona, expressing concerns with regards to the same problems. I'm happy to see that we are all here from both AutoSens and InCabin, and I actually dream of the day when this show will only be one show, because it will take it will be absolutely necessary for us to bring all of this together, both the inside and the outside of the car, in order to achieve our vision. And I'm happy to see that other companies feel the same. And on that note, I would like to express my excitement with regards to the partnership we have just announced with Qualcomm earlier this week. And I wanted to thank you all so much for coming here today. If you want to drop by our booth 100, I'm happy to give you a demo, or at the ST booth, where we're also showing our technology. And before I forget, we're doing a giveaway today. It's going to be during the reception. We're giving away a PS2 VR. And I would like you to notice that we're not giving away eye tracking technology. We're giving away a product that uses eye tracking, because that's what you will show up for, right? Thank you so much. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you, Bogdan. Okay, I'm afraid we just have time for one question on the stage.
Okay.
The others, I will reiterate, we'd love to direct you over to Tobii's stand where Bogdan and the team are waiting. Do we have any questions from the audience right now? We just have time for a quick one. No? All right, I'm going to give you a quick one. Would you care to talk a little bit more about the importance of partnerships and the stakeholders involved in this communication and journey to user acceptance?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
It's one of our main focuses today should be the ecosystem.
Of course.
In order for us to build something that the users will actually embrace, we will have to bring together all the information that we have, both from the inside and the outside of the car. And unless we all align, because we are all responsible for various parts. Tobii is a software company. We have many hardware companies here producing sensors, producing the SoCs. This will have to be thought of as a single system, and our visions need to come together. It doesn't have to be this vision, but it has to be one vision. That is very important, that we only have one vision, and we start thinking about the user, not about just delivering what we have to deliver.
Wonderful. And I think that's going to be touched on very shortly with our presentation from Euro NCAP, who you, of course, work very closely with as well. Okay, thank you so much,
Thank you so
Bogdan.
much.
Please give a round of applause. Wonderful. Thank you.
Bye.